He does. He will, for sure. Yes.
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. It's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We're happy to have you. And we'll start with the adoption of the agenda.
I motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All of those in favor, please raise your hands. 6. Okay.
I'm abstaining just as you can remember that.
And next up, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All of those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. And so then we'll go to the Board of Education acknowledgments. And we are going to start with our Employee of the Month. We have 2. Again, this month, is Tressa Brandt here with us? If you want to come up front here, should I do them separately or do them one at a time? Yeah. So Tressa, you've been nominated by your peers and or members of the public for your exemplary work. Tressa exemplifies dedication and compassion at work to ensure the safety of the students as a crossing guard, providing individualized support as a para, and ensures smooth operations in the lunchroom. Tressa's versatility and unwavering support make her an invaluable member of our school community. So congratulations. There you go. Yeah.
And I want you to stand in front of the Employee of the Month sign.
You want one member?
I think we'll do like this. We'll see what happens here. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
And next of all, Nate Johnson. You've been nominated by your peers and or members of the public for your exemplary work. Nate isn't afraid to think outside the box or try something new with his level students at Paola Middle School. His class is welcoming and well organized. Nate is a wonderful addition to the staff at PMS and the co-op. He cares for the kids and is the best teacher my child has ever had.
Oh, that's from up here. Congratulations.
Very good. Congratulations.
Well deserved.
Very well deserved. That's very, very nice. Do any members of the board have acknowledgments you would like to share?
I'd give kudos to Teresa. I've worked with her many years, and she's cream of the crop as far as pairs go. So,
Wonderful.
well deserving.
Very good.
Cream of the crop?
That's a thing.
Okay. And we'll start with
I was going to say administrator, someone like that.
administrators would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay. Last time,
Hey, so March is Youth Art Month, and Chloe Davis is an 8th grader, and Mrs. Kaplinger submitted one of her artworks to that exhibit. Right now, her artwork is on display at the Topeka Shawnee County Library, and we received word that her artwork has placed. Don't know what place, but pretty cool. So she's going to get recognized for that. So the reception's on the 29th of March, which is sponsored by the Kansas Art Education Association. So just wanted to give a big shout out to her. That's awesome and a great achievement for her. And she's super talented. So.
I'll go next. We have been working on our Kids Art Challenge, and our 5th graders are learning hands-only CPR, and that's really cool to see our students in there learning that. Shout out to Michelle Haley and our Kid Win team. They placed first in Burlington at the Kid Win competition, and will be going on to state in Salina later in April. Nice.
Go next, that's all right. Cottonwood, last week just completed a Read Across America week, and had a lot of fun days to dress up, celebrate reading. Tomorrow, Mrs. Wolf's 2nd grade class is going to, in conjunction with Julie Oakley's class at Sunflower, is going to deliver Happy Kids to Children's Mercy and get to tour some of the facility there. And so get to see where their donations go and how they could really live to give and exemplify that. And then Kindergarten Roundup, believe it or not, is coming up in just a few weeks, and we're looking forward to rounding up all those kindergartners that welcoming them into Cottonwood next year. And then later this week, Cottonwood has our spring parent-teacher conferences, Thursday and Friday, so busy week for sure. And then professional development, that we've been working with the Reading League and continue to do that, to work on our reading curriculum and strategies and staff development for that as well. And then also just to piggyback off of Teresa's award, she's very valuable member of Cottonwood family, and it's nice to see her at the corner every day reading the kids. And I told her today that often she is the first face that those kids see in the morning, and so it's always a smiling one. And Susie's out there with them too, so thanks for that. Rain or shine, sleet and cold, they're out there, and so, but that's just one part of what they do all day. And then Teresa certainly helps out, like you said, in the lunchroom and a lot of things behind the scenes that it takes everybody, and then she's a big part of that, so thank you.
Busy week at the high school as well. Tomorrow night's the FFA banquet. We got a pretty good keynote speaker coming in from Manhattan for that. I'm excited to watch. Wednesday night we have a choir concert. That'll be in middle school. I want to say thank you to Samantha for having our cheer squad come to Topeka last week. And our blue ribbon recognition was there the same day on the house floor. So thank you very much for that. Our kids were very excited about that opportunity. And I'd also like to congratulate our wrestling program. Michelle, you were out there at the state wrestling tournament because you had a son as a state qualifier, had an excellent tournament. And so Saturday couldn't have went any better for Paola. We ended up finishing 2nd as a team, and 3rd place round just kind of catapulted us for the rest of the day. We climbed to 2nd, and leapfrogged us back to 2nd, and then it took the final match of the tournament with Brock Johnson when he won his 3rd consecutive state title to put us back in the 2nd place. So I don't need to tell you much about the wrestling team and the coach. They just did an article about him a few weeks ago. Really special program with good things going on at the high school right now. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other acknowledgements before we move on? So the next information item is just a reminder for, graduation on May 17th at 10 a.m. just for board members so that we can be there.
Yeah, it is early, we know this, but because we want to make sure everybody has it for your calendar for that, because it is a Saturday morning. And more information will come, usually, about 30 minutes before is when we'll meet, but I'll send all that out later.
Okay. All right, next up we have our open forum, and we have a few of those this evening. And just as a reminder, the forum needs to be turned in at least 10 minutes before the start of the meeting. Each speaker will get 5 minutes to speak, and then patrons are advised that the board members will not entertain questions or discussion and will not take action. So the first one I have is Shirley Seck, if you want to come up to the podium, and then just whenever you're ready, they'll start your timer, and
All right, this won't take long.
yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Shirley Seck, and I'm a graduate of Paola High, as well as my husband, my 2 children, 4 of my 5 grandchildren, and I have 2 step-grandchildren currently in high school. And they are not LGBTQ, by the way. And I also have 3 great-grandchildren that will be attending Paola, and I want them to know that whatever they choose in life, I will be there for them to keep them safe. I am not really involved with the goings-on in the school anymore, since my kids have been out for quite some time. But when I read about what you did, I thought I needed to speak up. I don't care what color of your skin is, your religion, what physical or mental disabilities you have, if you are LGBTQ or political views, what your political views are. I treat everyone the same as it should be. Do you have any idea how many children die or attempt to die by suicide for being bullied? I suggest every one of you check it out. I did. The teachers and staff in our school have so many responsibilities other than teaching, and one of them is to try to keep our children safe, and I commend them for that. You, by your actions, just removed one of those safe areas. In my Sunday school teaching classes, I was taught that we are all God's children and that He loves us all. I don't remember Him saying, but only if you are white and heterosexual. I was told that you made this a school policy to remove the rainbow safe zone, but it is not a safe policy. You are moving us backwards into the dark ages, and you should be ashamed. I am pretty sure of the school board member that started this, and the rest of you just followed. This is the first time I can honestly say I am ashamed to be a Paola Panther. This doing away with DEI is ridiculous, and all of you should be ashamed of what you are doing to our children. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Strong Right. Welcome, and just whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, I'm Strong Right, as she just said. And this is my personal stance on this topic. It is important for everyone at school to feel safe, because if not, then why would people want to go to school? I think it only becomes a problem when they are trying to make the pride flag at the center of the safety. Because while I am not part of this community, the community's whole ideals is based upon pride, hence the name Pride Flag. And that, sometimes we believe that we are supposed to be ourselves and live our truths, but that is a lie from Satan himself. They only focus on worldly desires or something that benefits us in the short term. It is misleading to say that God accepts us the way we are. Rather, He accepts us despite the way we are. He receives us only in Christ and for Christ's sake. Nor does He mean to leave us, but to transform us into the likeness of His Son. That is a quote from Sinclair B. Ferguson. We are called to change for the better, not to stay the same and live in our sin. And our school should change for the better. If we don't let pride in our school, then we would all benefit. I'm not saying I do not welcome anyone part of this community, I love everyone who is part of that group, anyone who is a part of any group. This does not mean I agree with how they live their life. If God designed us one way, who are we to completely go against how we were made? We were made in His image, so we should follow what His law says. Romans 1:26-27. Worse followed. Refusing to know God, they soon didn't know how to be human either. Women didn't know how to be women. Men didn't know how to be men. Sexually confused, they abused and defiled one another. Women with women, men with men, all lust, no love. And they paid for it. Oh, how they paid for it, emptied of God and love, godless and loveless wretches. We need God in our everyday life to know what love is, because perfect love casts out fear. And if everybody in the school loved everybody equally and perfectly, we would have the need to feel unsafe. And if we all turn to God, we can know what it means to feel safe and to feel loved. Hence, getting rid of all the bullying and hate. Thank you.
Okay, Elsie Blackmore. And just when you're ready.
Good evening. Over the last few months, several of my peers have bravely stood up here and explained the significance and importance of these signs. However, we have been met with different kinds of reactions from each of the board members. We have seen you not paying attention to us or rolling your eyes at us while we're speaking, and you continue to ignore our request for this to be addressed. Yet, nothing has been done to put these signs back up when they should not have come down in the first place. I reviewed the minutes of past meetings from the school year, going back to September, and I found no mention of the IFA policy or the signs in any of the records. Begging the question, when exactly was the decision made to remove these signs? According to the policy BCBK titled Executive Session, the board shall conduct executive session only as provided in Kansas Open Meeting Act, or COMA. At no point was this ban discussed in an open meeting, which leads me to believe that this decision was made during an executive session. That being the case, it is still in violation of COMA. As stated in the policy, discussion during the closed or executive session shall be limited to those subjects stated in the motion. No binding action shall be taken during closed or executive session. However, this decision was never openly discussed by the school board. Instead, enforcement of a policy, one that directly impacts students, teachers, and family alike, was determined in secret. The superintendent then acted on this decision without any formal public deliberation, and this is deeply concerning. Discussion about policy enforcement must happen where the public can hear them, because these decisions affect all of us. A school board may enter executive session for certain limited reasons, such as discussion of personnel matters or legal issues. But they cannot use executive session to decide whether to enforce a policy and then direct action behind the scenes. Any official action must be taken in an open session or reflected in public meetings. That did not happen here, and this policy was enforced, although it was illegal to do so. By taking down these signs, not only did you violate multiple of your own policies, you have also violated state law. Why? Why was it so important that you were willing to break the law in order to take these signs down? What was the true reason to why these signs that have been up for half a decade or more must come down? You can't even talk about it during an open meeting, which means you are aware that it would receive backlash, yet you chose to stand by it when we have proven time and time again that these signs should never come down in the first place and that they need to come back up. Yet, you ignore our requests every time. When we emailed the members of the board, we were told that this would not be requested because it would open the floodgates to catering towards students and parents, that you were incapable. However, you are elected to act as an intermediary between the public schools and the community. You are taking these signs down not only shows that you do not care about your role, but by breaking the law to do so shows your community that you are here for the wrong reasons. We stand up here every month knowing that you are going to ignore us, yet we continue to speak up because we believe in standing for what is right. At least we have the courage to advocate for what we believe in, and at least we are able to express our own views of it in public. We ask that you reflect on the actions taken, reconsider the decision, and begin to engage openly and transparently with the community you were meant to serve. So tonight, I ask the board, why wasn't this issue discussed openly? Who made the decision and under what authority? Will you commit fully to transparency moving forward? Or will you still make policies that affect our community behind doors? When can we expect these signs to go back up? Thank you.
Valerie Taylor.
Good evening. This is the third time that we have stood in front of the board asking for the reinstatement of these signs. We have shared stories, we have sent emails, we have pleaded, and yet we continue to be ignored. I ask you tonight, why? Why did you decide to take these signs down in the first place? You have cited in your IFA policy numerous times stating that the signs push political beliefs onto students. That seems to be an argument that keeps being brought up, yet it continues to be invalid. This was passed in January of 2023, yet you left the safe zones up for nearly 2 years after that. They were not a problem then, so why now? Not to mention the fact that you did not ban or take down any Fellowship of Christian Athletes signs, which promote religious beliefs, also stated in your policy as a violation. And you took down the signs 2 days before winter break, when there was religious paraphernalia all over the school. Also, you did not take down the 7 mindsets or the yellow ribbon signs, which all portray personal beliefs that mental health matters, and not everyone agrees with that, yet they stay up. And though these signs promote students to reach out in times that they need help mentally, you took them down. So why did you take them down? These signs did nothing but let kids know that there was someone there for them. The majority of the student body did not even realize that these signs were there until after you decided that they needed to be taken down. Taking down these signs has caused more problems than caused when they were up. So why take them down? And why do you keep ignoring our requests to put them back up? All we ask is that for you to at least discuss during an open meeting why you took them down and when you will put them back up. Given that you never talked about taking them down in an open meeting, and we keep asking for this one simple thing, I feel that it is not strenuous of a task for an answer. Why will you not give us an answer? Why did you take these signs down? What is the actual reason that they came down? And why do you continue to ignore us? Thank you.
Natalia Cortez Barb.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalia Cortez Barb, and I did not come here to debate signs. I came here because I know that each and every one of you in your elected position cares very deeply about your students. I know that you care about their safety as it has been entrusted to you by the public. I know that you care about their education, which is why I came here today to ask a question. Why is it that we have so many children here for the last 3 meetings telling you that they do not feel safe and they do not feel supported in their schools? The signs are irrelevant to me. I could tell you a lot of things. I could read you statistics about the suicides among LGBTQ youth, about bullying. I could tell you that the LGBTQ community is a protected class under federal law, as recently as Bostock versus Clay County, as upheld by the Supreme Court in 2020. I could give you extensive research from the CDC and the American Psychiatric Society telling you that students' safety and well-being is directly tied to their success in school. But none of that matters. It does not matter one bit. All of the science, all of the study, doesn't matter. You have children in your care that are telling you that there is a pervasive feeling of fear and concern about discrimination in your schools. And as far as I can tell, there has been no action taken. And I know that you care about these kids. I know it. You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't spend all of this time working, coming to these meetings, hearing public comment if you didn't care about them. So, what I came here to ask today is, what will this board do? If signs are not the answer, if they are not allowed or permissible under current policy, what actions will this board take to ensure that all of your students, regardless of their identity, regardless of their status, feel protected and safe in your schools? Because they're here telling you they don't feel that. And that is a serious problem that every single parent, adult, and board member and educator here should be very concerned about. I am urging you, form a committee, do a study, form some sort of task force to get to the root cause of why all of these children are here telling you they need a sign to feel safe. They shouldn't need a sign to feel safe. I think we all know that. They should be able to come to school and feel safe, regardless of what classroom they're in, and they're telling you they do not feel that. So, I need you guys to take this home. I know that you cannot answer tonight. I know that there's nothing that you can do to respond to these kids tonight. Take this home and sit with it. What are you going to do to make these kids feel safe so that they can succeed in school? We need to do this now. Take this action of your own free will before tragedy compels us to do something. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, that is all of our open session, or open forums, excuse me. Okay, so next up we have action items. And first of all, we're going to consider the cost of living resolution, and Jimmy has some information for us on that.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of quickly recap. We had a couple different times that we've discussed this. And in board docs, all the information is carried forward again, just as a reminder out there for public content too. So I'm not going to rehash all that, but happy to answer any questions over that. But just kind of a few points to summarize and kind of bring everybody up to speed on the discussion. So just some things I thought were high-level reminders from the prior discussion. So first, the cost of living funds, as we've talked about, can be used for any purpose, including operating expenses or capital expenditures. The district qualification can change from year to year, as I've mentioned, so we have to qualify every year, even after this resolution would be approved. You still have to qualify every year. And the amount available can also change every year. So again, that's always something to keep in mind for the future. Using it for fixed cost may or may not be advisable, because the funding can change, it could end. Probably not likely, but so I put the history in there of what the funding has done and what you can see the trends have been on that, but that is always a possibility. But using it for capital cost in lieu of a bond issue results in no interest cost and no debt cost, because the projects will be funded with cash. We're not borrowing money. This is cash money, so there's no interest cost on that, unlike a bond issue would have. The other reason why it's important, we have no additional revenue sources available to us. As you know, from approving the past budget, our LOB is at 33%. That's the maximum. The capital outlay is at 8 mils. That's the maximum. Our bond, the 2 attempts failed, and they will be paying off in July. So we will no longer have those mills to use for capital and building upkeep. And you're aware of what our enrollment is doing in our head count. So those are our funding sources. Now we do get base state aid from the state legislature every year, and I've shared in my board reports, as I do every year, what those projections look like. So that was previous meeting information, but just to kind of recap. So the projection for next year is about $400,000 less than the prior year. And the last 2 years, if you recall, our state aid, which again kind of weighs in on what we're talking about, this cost of living because of the assessed value of our homes, as our relative wealth increases relative to the rest of the state, we get less state aid. So 2 years ago, we lost $343,000 in state aid, and last year we lost $421,000 in state aid. So obviously that comes off whatever increase we may get. So last year that was a $900,000 increase. You can refer back to my budget slide where I netted all that off. This year, just the gross increase is $495,000. So whatever that state aid is, if it's consistent somewhere between that $343,000 to $421,000 last year, that's going to take the lion's share of any increases next year. And again, that's our enrollment changes in there too, in addition to the additional that the state legislature is putting in. So net is around $400,000 less than the prior year. So the cost of living authority could be a potential source to offset that. As I mentioned, the bonds are paying off, and they will be paid off in July of this year. And so we could levy the cost of living and still remain revenue neutral, as we've been revenue neutral for 2 years now. If we levied it as that pays off, then it could still be neutral, all things considered, but more likely that could be possible. If you choose not to levy it next year but want to in the future, then that would not be revenue neutral, even if it's less at that point. Once you go down, if you go back up, that's not neutral anymore. So just to point that out, a reason why the timing makes sense now. This is similar to last year's budget, which was revenue neutral again, where some areas of the budget did increase. The local option budget tax rate increased, the dollars, capital outlay increased, but overall, the taxes levied decreased, because as you remember, some of the other areas that offset that. And again, tax notices and things or appraised value, assessed value notices have gone out. Also, we've recently filed our mill levy report, and that information is also out on the Miami County website. So just a recap of that, because it always lags a year behind in the budget presentation. Last year, we were the third lowest in Miami County. With our mill levy dropping last year, we are now lower than Lewisburg School District. So the only school district that touches a part of Miami County that's lower than us is Prairie View. And again, they have a power plant down there, so a little bit different. But they're really not that far out of the realm. We're at about 48 mills now, and they're about 43 mills. So again, just kind of recap what that looks like from a mill levy dollar and mill standpoint. This year we're levying almost 6 mills bond and interest. I'm going to spare all the tenths and hundreds of thousands of a mill and down to the penny of things, so I'll approximate, but roughly a 6 mil decrease there. The cost of living would add 2 mills. With the LOB impact, it's almost 3 mills. So -6 on bond plus 3 on all the cost of living changes, it would still be a 3 mil decrease next year. Now what does that mean in dollars? We're levying $1.4 million this year for bond and interest. The cost of living would add back $511,000. This year's number, again, I mentioned that amount changes every year, so you see that history in there, but that's what it would have been had we done it this year. The LOB impact of that adds $171,000, so roughly $700,000 total. So it would still, again, the $1.4 million won't be levied for bonds. We would maintain $700,000 roughly for cost of living and the LOB impact. So it would still decrease over $700,000 for taxes. So we're at 48 mills now. With the -3 mills, we would be roughly a 45 mil levy for the next year's school budget. And again, as I mentioned, Prairie View is 43 mills. Anywhere from there to Spring Hill at 67 mills being the highest. So I think that's important as tax discussion and things to know where we stand relative to others. And again, just point out that we've been revenue neutral for 2 years, as a few other entities have, but I would say that Palo School District's been very responsive. This is time for you all to have questions answered that you need to make your decision.
You included the KSA, and that's actually an out-of-date KSA because the most recent one allows an extra average percentage increase in the consumer price index for all urban consumers in the Midwest region, as published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which would be an extra additional 3.4%.
Do you happen to know the current statute number?
Oh, it's the same statute number, it's just revised. Yeah,
Okay.
672.
That could have been a prior. 'cause-
Yeah, it said 23 on it, so I just wanted to let you
Yeah,
know.
as long as the statute reference didn't change. Thanks for that.
So what does that mean though?
You can levy more on top of what the breakdown is. You can levy the CPI of the Midwest Urban Region on top of it, is what I'm understanding from it. For
I'm
the
not
school
knowing
year
what-
24-25 and each school year thereafter. The amount of the cost of living weighting cap for the immediately preceding school year plus an amount equal to the average percentage increase in the consumer price index for all urban consumers in the Midwest region is published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics of the United States Department of Labor during the 3 immediate preceding school years runs to the nearest tenth of a percentage. Which that actually might be in your calculation, I don't know for sure, but I just wanted to point that out.
Well, and that's what I was gonna point out, in there on the board docs is the cost of living percentage information from KSD. They do all the calculations, so I assume they probably take that into account, but I don't really dig into the semantics of that, but correct. They do the calculation, they tell us what we're eligible for. So they should, I would assume, have based that on whatever statute may have changed. But that detail is out there, and it shows, you know, the 4-year history on that, so like that rolling average you mentioned, so yes, I think they probably take that into account.
This may be a silly question. Yes, the mill levy will go down technically because the bond will go away. But have we ever looked internally at areas where we could save as a district to help save costs instead of continuing to ask the people of the community to give more to make up for the deficit?
You know, I'll just stick to the financial side of it, you all deal with the political side of things, but, I mean, that's why I share a mill levy. I think if you look at what we're doing, I'm not sure how anyone could say that we're not responsive to our taxpayers, compared to what we're doing.
I just know.
Yes,
with
and levying this would keep tax, no different than had our bond passed, it would have continued that.
Right.
This is actually still a decrease, but yes, it would keep a portion of that.
Yeah.
While still, and there's no, I can't remember how you worded it, but the mill levy would decline.
Sure.
And the tax levy would decline.
Sure.
Could they go down even more? Yes. The question I would ask is, how do you plan to fund the budget without that revenue source? That's something the board would have to figure out.
I just talked to several people who've gotten their letters in the mail, which I'm sure everybody's shell-shocked by it. And the resounding comment that I get is, I can't do it anymore. And so it just makes me kind of mull over in my mind, you know, how can we be as fiscally responsible to the people that we serve, while still doing a bang-up job in this district, because our kids deserve it, the teachers deserve it, you know.
And that's hard too, because there's so many other entities that weigh in on your taxes.
Sure.
Other than just the school. But from a financial standpoint, does it make more sense to do a bond or do this? Or is that just two totally different animals?
Well, I mean, different animals, of course, but I mean,
Right.
sitting here today, this bond is not an option for July 1 budget.
Right.
You don't have time to do that. So for future, could you? I would say this is a stopgap until that point in time. You put in the cost of living, and then if you chose to do a bond in the future, you could quit levying cost of living. But as I mentioned earlier, after July 1, that's the new budget year. And if you let those bond mills go to zero, and then you want to do this next year or do a bond after that, it's no longer revenue neutral. So that's just the nature of the process. how
So
it
this
works.
isn't something that you like reapply for every year. Once it's in place as long as you qualify?
As long as we qualify. You pass the resolution, it would be an option at that point. Now, there's a lot of details in there, like you, again, have to qualify every year, which KSD determines that based on the statute that Samantha mentioned. And then every year you have to approve the budget, just like you have to approve the local option budget percent, the capital outlay mills. You still have to go through that public process. So yes, the resolution has to happen first before it can even be considered. If you don't do the resolution, you can't even do it. And then once the resolution were to be passed, there's other criteria, which again is in all that information, like what percent LD you have to levy before you can even do this.
Right.
So yes, you do have to qualify every year, and the board would have to approve that every year.
I have a concern, so even if it goes down 3.007 mils, that would be equivalent to roughly 6%, say, maybe a little bit more, of a decrease, which, I mean, just in the county, they said that the average was a 6% increase, and I haven't heard of anybody yet personally who has received less or even 6% of an increase. I mean, I personally had an 8% increase in mine, so I don't know, even if we remove or brought it down 6%, while everybody else had higher than 6% property tax increase, how we can even remain revenue neutral by only bringing it down 3 mils, if that makes sense.
Well, are you asking, would we be revenue neutral? I mean, it would be, and maybe your question is more philosophical than practical, 'cause-
I don't question your math on it. My question is the fact that if people receive more than a 6% increase and we're only decreasing hours by 6%, then it would have to go, it would impact people's taxes. That's just, I mean, you can't change that fact. And then my other question was, of the money that we have, like in the rainy day fund or in any account, do we collect interest on any of those?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you have a number on what that is, and is that interest included in our budget?
The interest, yes, I can tell you that, roughly speaking. I won't try to pull it up and bore you with the details because it might take me a minute. But yes, all of our funds are invested in anything we can invest in. I mean, we use local banks and certificates of deposit primarily. And so that interest earning has been very significant lately what the rates are. And they're still up pretty good, but rates are starting to come down. So interest that we earn gets credited back to the fund. So if it's special ed, it goes in the co-op fund. If it's food service, it goes, so federal, we allocate those back to the fund. Anything for the district goes into capital outlay. So you can actually see that in the capital outlay budget. You will see this year actual in next year's budget publication. But it's a significant amount of money, more increase because of the way rates are and what we've been able to do with investments in bank CDs.
Should we include that in our budgeting process or not?
Yes, it's in capital outlay every year, the interest. So again, it's capital outlay is where we credit back the interest. Again, it fluctuates. It's kind of like this. You know, rates are high, so it's good. When rates were lower, it was not a significant amount of money. So, but it is in the budget every year in capital outlay. And I mean, as far as the revenue neutral, I mean, again, the 7 of you vote on the Palo School District budget and mill levy. You know, we don't have any control over what the other entities do, but you're correct. So we're about, if you have a house in the city of Paola, we are about 37% of your tax bill. So that leaves 63% of it is other entities that we don't control. So correct, we can't lower enough to offset what everybody else may or may not do. Whether they're revenue neutral or not, they go through the same process, they have the same public hearing, and so people can reach out to those entities about those aspects of their tax bills.
Yeah, and my math was based just on the 44 mils, that 44.9 mils are stated here, and I wasn't including county or city or fire district or library district.
And so if you look in your budget book, capital outlay, you know, again, not to bore and beleaguer with details, but in there's interest on idle funds. It's line 30 in the budget on code 16. So budget is, you know, again, we don't know. It's $300,000 was the budget amount. 23-24 actual was the last full year budget-wise was $359,000 of interest. 2 years ago it was $193,000. Now I will say that I know that number, but it's not published yet. But it will be that much more than from 2 years ago because rates have been high, stayed high, and we've been able to invest those dollars. So it will be significantly more, and I can get you the exact number and share it on my board coming up. So you'll see it in July. At least
$11,468, which is what the
Mhm.
cost of living adjustment
Yeah,
would be.
it would be that or higher, I'm sure. But that is there, just in the capital outlay. The other, like I mentioned, it's in those other funds, but.
So
Does that
now-
answer all your questions, okay?
Yeah,
Did I miss anything?
Is there any way to calculate like because all the appraisals went up, so is there any way to calculate the tax revenue that's gonna come in from that? On that, or is that kind of just a shot in the dark at this point?
Oh, there's certainly, yes, it's calculable. Can I do that right now? You want to keep this meeting going for about 9.5 hours?
But
I wouldn't attempt to do that.
This
When
doesn't
we get the
reflect that,
numbers.
is what you're saying. Does this reflect like last year's tax revenue? Is from the appraisals, according to that, last year, not the new ones?
This is all based on last year's data,
Okay.
nothing new. So the KSDE data was based on the prior year.
Okay, so if, just hypothetically, if we passed the resolution and then we got to the budget and the money was there from the appraisals, then can we go, well, we don't really feel like we need this now, or how does that work?
Yes, passing the resolution tonight gives you the option. And like I said earlier, you will have to approve the budget and go through the public process. If we're revenue neutral, you'll follow that process. If we're not, then you'll have the other public hearings that are required for that.
Okay.
So yes, you're always going to see it again and vote on the budget and be able to have input in.
But I mean, will you have like those new numbers from the new appraisals for that budget?
Oh, yes.
Will you- Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
yes.
what I was trying to, sorry.
Yes, that is coming. So in July, so I can't do that sitting here in March,
Right.
but by July board meeting, as you remember last year, that's when you have to approve whether we're exceeding revenue neutral or not. And that's very quick, but we always get it done early so that you have plenty of time to do that, because you have to, that's what generates that taxpayer notice. And you could just put that out there for whatever you think. I do my best to get the budget done, sometimes even in just a few days, because your fiscal year end is June 30th. And so it all depends on the legislature and when they wrap up and what happens when the budget program comes out. That is a tight turnaround. Hence, some of the things I've shared about the revenue neutral timeline. It's tighter than if you're not revenue neutral. You have an extra 30 days to do your budget if you exceed revenue neutral, which to me is an interesting concept. But we get it done no matter what. But yes, you will see that in July, and it will consider the current assessed value rates. The county will notify us of the revenue neutral rates, and then you will vote to exceed that or to not exceed that come July.
Okay.
But back to your question, yes, you have to have the resolution to even consider this. And just back to, I think, Samantha's point, if there's something else like assessed value, and if that ends up being higher dollars, like it was $511,000, if it's $700,000, at that point you can decide you want to do 500 or 400 or whatever. But you have to have the resolution to even have that as an option.
And we don't have a hard number on what the state funding is, correct?
From the legislature?
We haven't really passed the full budget yet, so.
Right, exactly. We have the projections, which I've shared, and that's what I mentioned earlier, that's about 400,000 less. And then, of course, going on the past, if the assessed value is up 6% or whatever, we're probably going to be relative to the rest of the state more wealthy, so we're gonna get less state aid. Again, I couldn't project that at this point, but come July, you'll have a better idea.
And how much of that 400,000 is tied to the pure per pupil spending, do you know?
Of the 495,000 projected for next year?
We're losing from state funds, so we won't be getting.
Well, it would be based off our base state aid per student.
Yeah, and for our enrollment change, that's 157,000 of the decrease. But that's in my board report you can refer to. So the base state aid increase, based on what's projected to be put in at the $5,611 per student, that's $529,000 increase. And again, I'm rounding, but offset by $157,000 decrease because of our enrollment decrease, that makes $372,000 from the state, the net, after our enrollment change. And then we can levy, it flows through the general fund, which gets the LOB. And so that adds $122,000. So 372 plus 122,000 is $495,000 projected for next year. So it's the state plus the LOB, which is all local. There is state aid on LOB, but this is the local part. Whereas that $495,000 last year was $899,990. So that's what I'm saying, 900,000 down to 500,000. It's $400,000 less.
And is this the first time that we're going to 33%?
No.
No, okay.
No, we've been, our election, I can tell you the year. No, we've been at 33% for several years.
Okay.
I think the election was in 2015, maybe?
That was the capital outlay that we won.
Capital outlay was
That
2014. LOB increased election was, that was passed through that actually was a ballot question, so, May 1st, 2015. We had authorization prior to that, but that was when things changed and you had to go to an election because it used to be 30%. Now with all the state average and all the other things, but that was for the 33% authority, May of 2015.
They used to having so many questions asked.
Hopefully I've answered them all to your satisfaction. So.
Any other discussion on that?
So right now, Jimmy, if we pass this, we're not increasing the taxes. We're just giving this as an option when the budget time comes.
Correct. This is the first step. You have to publish that approve the resolution, then it would be published in the newspaper and follow all those steps to even be able to consider it next July.
I'd like to make a motion
Can I
to,
ask one more question really quick?
go ahead.
Sorry. If you didn't think that we would need to use it, would you request for us to pass the resolution?
Say today or in July, either way, I'd shut the same way. So, I mean, it's an option for you. I feel like my job is to give you the options. You have to weigh the pros and cons, and knowing what the future looks like, and without a bond, and with some of that decrease in state aid and things. I mean, my job, as I see it, is to tell you about the revenue sources and give you that option. So, because again, we're going to be talking about negotiations and expenses for next year, and it's very similar to prior years. And so, I want you to have all the avenues available and for the district, so we can meet the needs that we have.
So you feel like we need it? Can I ask that? From a financial standpoint.
I mean, you can ask that.
I would say this.
I don't vote on this, so.
Right, but I mean, you know.
I presented all the data. I guess you can
Correct.
determine the need.
Correct.
I would say this. There's a budget process that Jimmy does an excellent job of, and we'll discuss that, I mean, multiple times. The one piece that cost of living does allow is a flexibility, and I'm gonna talk dire straits here, so we never hope, because we've done a nice job of being physically conservative and so forth. So take capital outlay, for instance, we're at 8 mils. And we need that 8 mils for building upkeep. But let's say that something happened, we have a decrease in budget like when we had it. This would allow, if cost of living was there, this would allow, and I'm just throwing numbers out, say you needed 2 mils for operating expenses, that you could, in a budget year, you could decrease your capital outlay from 8 mils to 6 mils and do cost of living to where your mills are the same, but it gives you better flexibility to spend that money under the capital or cost of living versus capital outlay would be for that. Now, are there other ways to do that? I mean, there are some mechanisms, but capital outlay. So those are just options. I tell you that not to persuade one way or the other. That's just a way to, hey, we're in, because if something happened, you couldn't do that mid-year. So when, back to 2008-9 or whatever, we got cut mid-year. That doesn't help there. That would only help if, hey, this is where we're at. We're getting ready to move into where, okay, we got through that. Now I can pull that back out and go put that back into capital outlay or whatever. So it's a mechanism to try to help if you got into that piece. That would give boards, current board, whoever at the time, a flexibility. I guess, you know, from the other side, once it's there, you know, what does the future hold with it? I mean, that depends on the board at the time, which none of us would know.
I think my personal annoyance with it in general is the name of it being cost of living, and the fact that we're even have the option because the assessed rates within our district are higher than the state average, and then we want to raise, I mean, hopefully we would stay revenue neutral no matter what, but to piggyback off of the backs of the taxpayer who has continuously gotten record high appraisal year after year after year, I think is disingenuous towards the taxpayer. Maybe it's just because the cost of living is the name of it and that's what bothers me. I know that we definitely need to consider all of the options, but it's really difficult for me to stomach the thought of potentially adding more on the backs of the taxpayer without them saying, yes, we're okay with it.
Well, and that's why the legal notice, what you would, if you approve the resolution, it'll be in the newspaper with all the details in there. That's part of it, so.
And I think, you know, the last thing we want to do is sit here and continue to raise taxes. But realistically, I mean, the school does take money to function, and you also don't want to choke out the school in the process of. So it's a giant balancing act.
And did I hear you right? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did I hear you right? This at least has the flexibility that when we do the budget, we can use it for either or correctly, all of this, right?
Absolutely. It can be for capital, it can be for operating. Yes. And I agree, the name of it is kind of a misnomer, cost of living. You think of a percent increase, but it would probably take some legislative action to change the name to something more appropriate, whatever that may be, if you happen to know anyone.
Point well taken though, I mean.
Absolutely. We don't control that, unfortunately, but.
I didn't
So that's what it would say in the newspaper, cost of living. I get it's confusing like a lot of things, and we try to explain that and make it as simple to understand as possible. But yeah, it has nothing really to do with what you think about cost of living increases for Social Security or anything like that. No, nothing. It's just the name. It's housing cost of living.
All right. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the cost of living resolution.
Second. Because I think we should have the option, whether we use it or we don't. But if we don't pass it, there's no option.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to pass, is it called pass the resolution?
Yeah, approve the cost of living
To
resolution.
approve the cost of living resolution. All of those in favor of this approval, please raise your hands. So 6 in favor.
Opposed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it'll be in the paper probably next Wednesday. Or shortly after.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You're welcome.
So the next item up for action is vote for the Acacia Board of Director and Appeal Board, and Matt has some information for us on that.
Yeah, so every year, there's a Acacia Board of Directors that has elections, if you will, to serve on the Board of Directors and then also on an appeal board. It just so happens that one of our middle school representative for our region is Mr. Blaustein. His term is up, but he is eligible to rerun. So Mr. Blaustein has indicated to the Activity Association that he would be willing to rerun. The other position that is open is for a board member position within, and that is Rob Bose, which happens to be from Lewisburg, and they're both running unopposed. And then for the Acacia Appeal Board is Dr. Sonia Evans. I believe she is with the Blue Valley School District, if I remember correctly. And so no one is running against her. So this would be a recommendation for the board to cast their ballot for these 3 individuals. If there's an individual you don't, then it would be either you don't cast a vote for one of those 3, or you can write in some. And some years we have multiple names in that ballot. It just so happens that this year we do not. And they meet twice a year for the board of directors. Is that correct, Mr. Bossine?
Yes, well, there's a couple, there's a regional meeting that we have, which is just the local area, but then we also have 2 separate meetings that are in.
And then the appeals board meets as needed.
I motion to approve the Acacia Board of Director and Appeal Board ballots.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the Acacia Board of Director and Appeal Board. All of those in favor, please raise your hands. 7. Thank you. And next, approve the Cardiac Emergency Response Plan.
Yeah, so we've had a cardiac emergency response plan for quite a few years. With legislation passed last year, there were some details that we needed to include in ours and formalize. So what we've done is we've tried to take our current plan, we've tweaked it a little bit, but then also include the responsibilities or what is needed in the plan as appendix, in the appendices, if you will. And basically what the statute says is that every attendance center needs to have a plan in place and people trained and so forth. I will tell you that as a district, we have been at the forefront of this by the number of people we have had our staff trained that are any kind of coach or sponsor. We have done that before the Activities Association required it, before then obviously the statute and so forth. So for this, really the only change is some paperwork. I mean, in the plan, if you will, if you go to the very back, if you looked at that, I mean, the number of people in this in the different buildings and so forth, there's multiple. And so the different building plans will actually be part of that part of the document will go in the AED box and so forth. And so that way, and in the very back has a emergency response form that we fill out. So when EMS gets there, we can actually give them some information to help with that. Like if we have name, we know what's going on, we can actually send that with them. And so if you ask, well, why is this building not have that? Because this isn't an attendance center. But we have people plan to be trained. I'm trained, so and we've had others that just need to re-up their certification. So I'm happy to answer questions. This approval tonight would be, and historically this is when we've approved it, and we do work with Dr. Green here in town. She has been with kind of as our medical director for this, but this approval would be for the remainder of this year and then also for next year, and then we have to reapprove this every year. But this would be with the assumption, because all the information is going to be. The only thing that could change is, with people coming and going, that list of people that are currently certified. That part is a living document of it.
I will say that during the hearing on the legislation that actually brought this about, the differences between our school districts and a lot of the school districts is why that even became an issue that needed to be addressed, was night and day. And the fact that, you can walk around any area here and you'll see an AED within walking distance of any gym or anywhere where any child could possibly be during the school day or during activities. So I would commend the entire school district for being ahead of the game on that one. And it also easily lists who's certified on the side of it, that you can read it. And I just thank you for being ahead on that one, I guess is what I was saying.
And you heard him talk about, Ms. Wilkich was, hands-only CPR with the, all of our sophomores, have hands-only CPR as well. So, I mean, it's not just our staff, but then, we have some kiddos and stuff too.
The only question I had on it, Matt, was like, it looks like Hillsdale Learning Center and the Adult Learning Center in Cottonwood, like your team coordinator doesn't have the qualifications on those 3 schools. Is that just that?
No,
the intent for them to get that, or is that, and they just don't have it at this time, or is there a reason why?
No, because I'll use adult ed, for instance. Our team coordinator, whenever a situation happens, it is the administrator that's gonna be, taking care of making, if they're there, anybody can do it. That's why they're listed. But like, for instance, Mrs. Ulansky-Swink is not, and part of that is because sometimes people physically can't, they could not perform that, so that would be, so that's why it's not, sometimes that they're, and that would be the only place that could happen, is you could have a team coordinator, that's not, but anybody else that's listed, if they didn't have something, they wouldn't be listed.
That was the only thing I noticed, was that those
and
were
when we
missing
train, if it's automatic, you train with CPR, you're trained on the AED as well.
And honestly, the AED machines, after seeing how they work, most anybody was able, it walks you through the process too. If no one else is around, you can use it.
Absolutely. Like my certification labs, as an example. Okay, well, it wasn't like, if somebody, if needed CPR, it's not like you're gonna stand there and go, well, I'm sorry, my certification's like, I don't mean that to be, what I'm saying, it's not, but you stay up to date because make sure your skills are still good and so forth. But that is, why, and you're right, our AEDs, it walks you through the steps too on if you should shock or not.
I motion to approve the cardiac emergency response plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the cardiac emergency response plan. All of those in favor, raise your hands. And 7.
Okay. Madam President, I move that we go into executive session with Jimmy and Matt to discuss negotiations pursuant to negotiations in order to protect privacy interest in negotiating a fair and equitable contract, and that we return to open session in this room at,
I only need 10 minutes tops. I only need 5 minutes unless you all have something, so.
7:17.
Probably do 7:20, so that'll give everybody time to get a drink.
I like the weird numbers. 7:20.
7:20
it is. Okay, wait, we have a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second to go into executive session. All of those in favor?
It was, yeah. I don't need these.
Well, summer hasn't gotten here yet. When it's 100 degrees at ball games, I won't wear my white or light coat.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning? 7 of us, okay. Thanks, guys.
I take that back, school boards are not
Kelly,
even under that plan.
What's that?
School boards aren't even under the plan that we did last week.
Oh.
Like, there's nothing.
The revenue neutral.
No, like, all removed, the only, the new bill only covers, cities and counties.
I think I did.